Hey Thumpers, welcome to our non-spoiler review of Justice League. We got a chance to see it at the beginning of this week. Very excited to talk about this movie. This is going to be a non-spoiler review, so we're not going to reveal secrets about the movie. No. We're going to give you sort of our overall consensus, how we feel about the movie. This is a movie that has a very interesting history. We were talking about it just right before. The layers and layers and layers of complexity to get this movie made.
Right. There was a lot of stuff that came into this movie that didn't bode well. Like if you would have sent me a list of all the things that this movie had to go through before we actually saw it, I would have said it's gonna be a failure.
Yeah,
it's gonna be a failure 100%.
Yeah.
Gladly, I had fun with this movie.
Same.
I had a lot of fun with this movie.
So just to give you guys a little context as to what I'm referring to, after Batman vs. Superman, obviously there was a lot of sort of divisiveness with that movie.
Yeah.
Warner Brothers had a reaction. Their reaction was to, or it seems like their reaction was to lighten up the tone.
Change tone.
Exactly, which some people say that was already the plan. There's interviews with Chris Terrio who kind of says that was the plan. But then we heard that there was a plan to even more so lighten the tone. That's one layer. Right. Mm-hmm. Then we get Wonder Woman, and the response to that is so positive. Everyone is saying that's what it needs to be.
That's the tone. So they try to follow that
second layer. Then Zack Snyder leaves the project. It gets taken over by Joss Whedon. That's another layer of changes.
Third layer to this cake.
Exactly. Then I'm sure Jeff Johns had more of an influence. That's another layer. And then the studio demands a 2-hour cut. A fifth layer. So there's just a lot of things that are kind of layering up and kind of going against what this movie could be. But I agree, despite all of those things that it had to kind of overcome, it's still very entertaining.
Absolutely. The movie was very I can't talk. Very entertaining.
Yeah.
So I came into this movie not a huge fan of BVS.
Of course.
Not a huge fan of Suicide
I wasn't either.
So I came in with, it's weird, with as equal of a low bar as I did a high bar.
Sure.
It's in a really weird place. I've never felt that before, but I was excited. So I got to see it in a very special way. I was actually at the world premiere at the Dolby Theater in Hollywood, which was awesome. Gal Gadot was there. You know, everybody was there. Ben Affleck, Jason Momoa, everybody. The whole Justice League was literally 50 feet below me when I was watching this movie.
So cool.
It was awesome. The theater was absolutely going bananas. That's one thing I wanted to ask you. How was your theater experience?
That was the weird thing. So I went and I saw it at Burbank 16. Shout out to the people who were there at Burbank watching, and thank you guys so much for saying hi. I really was surprised when I walked in the theater. I thought we were going to have to rush in to get seats and all kinds of crazy stuff. It was about 75% full.
Really?
There was a good amount of seats that were left empty. Naeem came. He literally got there at 7:15 and just walked in and we had a seat for him.
Wow.
Like that's how, not empty, but that's how like not completely busy it was.
Yeah.
And the theater for the most part, there was some parts of the movie that, for spoilers, we won't discuss, but there are a couple parts of the movie where people got excited, but generally it was kind of mellow.
Oh, okay.
Which I was surprised because, like, I got excited for certain things, but I kind of felt like the only one sometimes.
So I had an interesting experience. This was one of the first times in a long time where I didn't watch a superhero movies with you guys next to me.
Yeah.
Because we usually watch them together.
Yeah.
So I sat with the guy who was indifferent about superhero movies to my right. Really nice guy. And he expressed that he was not a big fan of Batman vs. Superman either. And I sat next to a girl on my left who we were talking about superheroes a little bit, and she kind of aligned with what we talk about on this show. So I was like, okay, cool. I can kind of gauge her reaction and his reaction. It'll give me an interesting time.
Yeah.
By the time the movie was over, they both were like, you know what? I had fun.
Yeah.
Like the guy who was kind of coming into it pessimistically was like, I had fun. And the girl who was to my left, I had to explain a few things to her. She was like, oh, that's why, this thing and this thing. And so I found it very interesting to gauge their responses. But also at the beginning of this movie, every single name that popped up, there was thunderous applause in the beginning credits. And that's why I wanted to ask you about yours, because mine, I think people were just kind of like being loud because, first of all, they're excited and the actors are there.
Of course.
So they want to show their fandom, like they want to be as loud as possible.
Show the love.
Yeah. So it was an interesting experience with the audience. But to jump into the movie, it's kind of difficult to talk about without getting into spoilers.
Of course, yeah.
But overall, I think they did some really cool stuff. I'll just jump to one of my favorite points in which We get to kind of see the Justice League in action. And when they're in action, I was like, this is the Justice League I was looking for. Mm-hmm. Everybody's doing their role. I feel like I had time with these characters beforehand to like kind of understand their motivations. And when they were like sort of like their intro battle sequence, I was like, this is what each one of them would do in the Justice League cartoon.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is it. They're hitting the heart of what the Justice League needs to be. And it feels like it's in its very early phases, but I feel like the tone that they went for, they nailed the fact that this is the Justice League.
Yeah. I know I wrote a thing on Twitter, and I still more or less feel the same way about this. I think the movie is 80% of the way there.
Oh, absolutely.
And I
give
think
it a B+.
Yeah, and I think, you know, it's there 80% of the way because of the fact that it has all the working pieces to make it a great movie. The characters are awesome. The actors play the characters so well. I personally, I might have preferred, I think I like the way Batman was written more in this, but I think performance-wise, I think I like Ben Affleck in BVS more, the way he acts as Batman.
Yeah.
But Gal Gadot's great. Ezra Miller's great. Jason Momoa, Ray Fisher, Henry Cavill, J.K. Simmons, like everyone in the movie is really good. Mm-hmm. But I feel like the movie would have been 100% of the way there if they didn't have the mandate of the 2-hour movie.
Absolutely.
I think this is the one movie in the DC universe that kind of earned the 2.5-hour.
If there was any movie, this one
duration.
Would have been it.
Yeah, because we're introducing 3 new characters, right?
Yeah.
Aquaman, Cyborg, and then the Flash. Mm-hmm. Cyborg's story, I think is very easy to tie into the Justice League movie because of how the character sort of is created in Batman vs Superman. He's a part of this apocalyptic technology. Yeah. With Flash and Aquaman, I would have preferred if we would have had a little more time kind of exploring their worlds. Yeah. We go to Atlantis, we see Mara. We're not explained any of that. You know, with Henry Allen, if you watch, and that's the thing, this movie was made for fans. Mm-hmm. If you read DC Comics, if you watch the Flash TV show, if you've seen past episodes of Justice League, you know what all of this shit is.
Absolutely.
So it's not that crazy to be like, oh, I know that isn't a, that isn't a, but you know this world.
But if you don't know it, it's confusing.
When I went to go watch the Marvel movies and Nick Fury shows up at the end, I had no idea what the hell was happening.
The first time,
right? I never read Marvel comics. But by the time I got to the Avengers, I appreciate all the characters because we had spent time with all these characters. Right. So I feel like Flash and Aquaman should have had a movie prior to establish not only them as characters, but their worlds. Who is Mara? Where did he come from? What is all these things? You don't have to answer all the questions, but I feel like enough for me to, when I see these characters, I know what's happening.
To care about the event that's happening when Aquaman goes back underwater.
Exactly. Yeah. And the same thing kind of goes with Steppenwolf. I think he actually... I actually do like what they were doing with him as a villain. I just wanted more of the why. Why are you doing the things that you're doing? What's your relation? Because I read that he, in this version, he's Doomsday's or Darkseid's nephew, not his uncle.
Yeah.
But that's never established. They don't really establish why Darkseid wants to take over Earth. No. We don't really get an understanding as to where the parademons came from. Mm-hmm. You know, there's a lot of things that are just not explained, and there's things from BVS that are not kind of fulfilled. Yeah. The whole Flash thing, and this is not really, I don't feel like this is a spoiler, but it's not really, they don't really go into...
and you're talking about when Flash comes in BVS and says, am I too
None of that
early,
stuff is really like paid off in this movie. Yeah. It kind of feels like, not that they I don't want to say they ignored Batman versus Superman, but the only main sort of story that kind of plays into this movie is the death of Superman.
Basically, yeah.
The rest of it is kind of like, well, we're reworking it, which I'm like, that's fine. But I think if we would have had those things, I think we would have had Flash and Aquaman origin. We would have spent more time developing the characters in the beginning. We would have maybe spent a little more time establishing why of the villain. Yeah. Then I think the movie would have went from like an 80 to like a 95.
Yeah.
And maybe the other 5% would have just been spending more time massaging the script and massaging the look of the movie. Yeah, otherwise, I think like the ingredients are all there for a great movie.
The ingredients are there, and that's what I'll give it. That's what I got the most out of it was the heart.
Yeah,
that's why I keep saying the heart is there of the movie. So I feel like they took all the criticisms and they learned from it, and they learned that maybe we don't necessarily have to make every character dark and brooding. Maybe we can let them be their own character,
right?
And that's what they were.
The world, like, and we've talked about this so much. It's like Superman is not the dark character.
Right.
The dark thing in Superman's world is the world around him.
It is the world.
He's the one person who's the beacon of light, who's supposed to be this sort of particular thing, this inspirational hero. Exactly.
Yeah. Now, if there are some hardcore DC fans out there who are looking for this dark and gritty movie, you're not going to get it, because Ezra Miller, almost every time he was on screen, got a huge laugh.
Yeah.
There were moments where the whole theater was an uproarious laughter. And I was like, this is good. This is good stuff, because I really ended up liking The Flash, but I don't know how it's going to sit with really hardcore fans who are like really looking for that dark and gritty.
Yeah, and that was my big thing walking out of the movie was like, I don't know how people who love BVS and Suicide Squad, I don't know how they're going to react to it. I don't know if they're going to be like... I feel like their argument's going to be, oh, well, we Marvelized this movie. I'm like, no, this is a DC movie.
Right, exactly.
This to me feels like DC Unlimited, Justice League Unlimited, Justice League the Animated Series. Yep. This feels like it has shades of the animated series for both Batman and Superman. I mean, we see him on a gargoyle. Like, there's so many. There's the references to the New 52.
Was great, very classic.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, there's references to the New 52. Like, there's so much stuff in here that I think, like, it's all there. It's all there. I think it's just I personally would have just pushed the release date till the summer of next year.
Yeah.
I would have just said, you know what?
Give
Fuck
it some more time.
Let's give it 6 more months. Let's
massage let
that
those
script
VFX
out.
bake a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
And speaking of that,
oh boy.
These VFX are rough, y'all. Like
some of them a lot rougher than others.
Yes. Okay. So I will say off the bat, I criticized Cyborg a lot from the trailers.
Yeah.
And he was a lot better than he was in the trailers.
Totally.
But I still had major issues with Cyborg. There was just, you couldn't comfortably look at his face because the plate on the side of his face would ever so slightly slide. It's the uncanny valley type of slide where you're just like, there's something weird here and I can't really put my finger on it. Yeah. There was times where they would replace his face altogether and the animation was kind of choppy and not that great. I didn't notice any big CG things for Wonder Woman, which is great. I really enjoyed the way they kind of explored the Speed Force with the Flash. That was the effects they did on that was actually really cool. Even though we've seen the Speed Force, not Speed Force, but Quick characters in X-Men.
Quicksilver, both Quicksilvers.
Yeah, both. Actually, it's the same character. Huh? It's both Quicksilvers. Who else did I enjoy? Jason Momoa's underwater stuff was pretty on point. Yeah,
I mean, and like again, like some of this stuff is very difficult to pull off.
Yeah, exactly.
And I know for Batman vs Superman, they actually had Jason Momoa in a pool.
Yeah,
and it was so difficult to do. And for Jason Momoa looked like he was constantly like holding his breath. It just didn't look.
It didn't look
the way
natural.
It needed to look.
He didn't look like an underwater being.
Exactly.
He looked like a human underwater who was
holding
like,
his breath.
I need to leave right now.
Yeah.
Let's see who else. I didn't have any issues
with Superman.
Yeah. Wait, we should...
That mustachio.
Okay.
Look, we all know that Superman's in the movie. Let's be real.
We could just cut that part out. We could just edit that part out. I just won't say Superman because I was like, wait, not everybody knows. Okay. Batman, I didn't have any VFX issues with.
No.
Sometimes you could see that his cowl was like coming off of his chin.
Sure.
And I think that was it. Oh, well, obviously Steppenwolf.
Right.
Steppenwolf was just a big gray monster. It was hard for me to understand what he was saying sometimes. Okay. How was your audio in your screen?
I found him to actually be pretty easy to understand. And maybe it was just where I was sitting. Like I was pretty close to the front of the theater, so
I was in the back. So
you were
maybe
pretty far.
I think I was close to a big bass speaker.
Yeah.
Because when he talked, all I heard was bass.
Gotcha. Yeah, and we were in the IMAX theater. And I will say that definitely compared to Doomsday, but maybe even compared to Ares, this is like the clearest look we've had at the villains.
Yeah, actually,
I feel like every time, for all the other movies, it's really quick cuts and it's close-ups and it's far away, so far you can't see anything, and then super close. Yeah. Whereas with this, it's very much like this is Steppenwolf. Yeah. This is how big you get a good idea of scale and movement.
And
And that's I think that's the other thing that I really like is when they do the fight sequences. You kind of get a better understanding of what's happening. Yeah, they pull back a little bit and they let it breathe a little.
Right. It's not those quick cuts where you have no idea what's going on. Yeah, absolutely.
Even with some of the characters who do the more fantastic sort of things, they're leaping and jumping and fighting with swords. Yeah. Like when Wonder Woman is fighting Steppenwolf, sword against axe,
you could see her.
You like really get a sense of what's happening in the sequence.
Yeah, absolutely.
And even though the movie underwent all these reshoots and stuff, a lot of the VFX I actually thought were pretty decent.
Yeah, so that's also what I wanted to hit on.
Yeah.
The VFX are rough, but given the amount of time and given the amounts of research of reshoots that I personally, there's no confirmation, but personally, I think there was way more research than reshoots than they're giving credit for.
Yeah, it's like 20% apparently.
Honestly, I think there was more than that, but that's just me. That's just my opinion. Like,
well, you can definitely tell when Ezra Miller's hair and Ben Affleck's hair drastically changes and they're wearing wigs. You're like, yeah, that's
exactly. So I'm just like, you know what? There was major reshoots on this, and given the amount of time they had, the VFX artists and the directors and everybody pulled off a miracle.
Yeah.
Because this movie
way worse.
Is a CGI fest.
Yeah.
It's mainly CGI, which is, I don't care. Like, I know I'm going to a superhero movie. I know it's going to be a big CGI
There's no way around that.
So given the fact that they had such a short turnaround time, I don't know if these people saw their families for months because they must have living at the office.
Sleeping bags under their desk.
24/7. But so it's rough, but I'll give it a pass. And I'll give it a pass because I know the time constraints. And I'll give it a pass, and I'm going to go back to this because the movie has heart.
Yeah.
I had a good time. And I don't know if I can talk any more about this without giving any spoilers. So I'm just going to wrap up my thoughts and say I had a really good time with this movie. If you are looking forward to the change that DC said that they were going to bring, this movie, you're going to enjoy this movie because it is a huge tonal shift. If you are kind of on the fence, not a real big fan of Batman vs. Superman or Suicide Squad, give this movie a shot. I'd like to actually know what people like that actually think.
For sure.
Because, like, I wasn't a fence sitter. I was on the other side. But if somebody who's, I'm indifferent about the movies, that's an interesting opinion that I'd like to know.
Yeah.
And if you're a super huge Batman vs. Superman fan, definitely let us know what you thought after you see this movie.
Yeah. Wrap up my thoughts. I agree with you. I would love to see both sides of the spectrum. If you love those previous two movies or if you did not like them, what are your thoughts?
Yeah.
I will say that the movie does sort of feel like it's the product of multiple people's visions.
Absolutely.
Not necessarily that that's good or bad.
Y'all.
I think when they needed those people to come in to help the movie, it helps the movie.
Absolutely.
Even though they have huge time constraints. And I think, yes, some of the stuff does suffer visually. But again, it's that whole thing of like, look, they really understood that they wanted to make the best movie possible.
Absolutely.
And I think they salvaged what they could and they made a good movie.
I think they did make the best movie
possible. And it's like, yes, the 2-hour runtime probably does make the movie suffer a little bit. You could have had the extra 20 minutes to let it breathe a little. I get it. You didn't want a 3-hour movie. That's totally fine. I would be interested to see this on this is the one movie in the DC universe where I'm like,
give me an extended cut.
This is the one where I would like an extended cut.
Yep.
For BVS, I wanted the shorter cut.
Exactly.
For this, I'm like,
shorter.
okay, what's the extra 20 minutes?
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of stuff in the trailers that never makes it. Like,
absolutely.
Really pivotal shit that we'll talk about in the spoiler review. But I'm like, if you take all the trailers, it's about 3.5 minutes of footage that's like eliminated out of the movie.
And it could have changed the game too.
It could have. Yeah. But again, overall, I think the characters for what they do with them, it's really great.
Yeah.
It's hopeful. It's inspirational. It's fun. It's all the things that I really have wanted from a DC movie since we got it in Wonder Woman, but prior to that, I wanted it from all the other movies. Right. So I can't say that I was disappointed. I don't think the movie's bad. I actually think the movie's
not bad.
The movie's good. Could it have been great? Could it have been awesome? Could it have been a 10?
Absolutely.
Sure. All movies can be. Not all of them end up being that way. But I think for what we got, I'm pretty satisfied. And if anything, it made me super excited for the next. It made me super excited for Aquaman. It made me want a Flash movie. It made me want a sequel to or another Batman movie. Absolutely another Wonder Woman movie.
Yep.
A Superman movie, 150%.
Yeah.
And other things that I won't say because it'll spoil
because
things.
we can't talk about them yet. So we'll be back later on this week after Hector sees the movie.
Yes.
You're going to go see it again.
Yes.
We'll be back and doing a full-on spoiler review once you guys get a chance to see the movie as well.
Absolutely.
So we'll see you guys here later on this week, I hope.
Oh, I hope so too.
Yeah.
Where can everybody find you, Augustine?
You can find me at L_Santo Taco.
And you just find me at Adam Have It. Guys, let us know in the comments. Non-spoilers. What did you think? Type. Bye.